but I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Mo, and this is The Missing Piece.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Trish. This is The Missing Piece, and we're broadcasting live from New Orleans 105.3 FM and United Public Radio Network. And tonight is Monday, August 1st, actually. Today was Lugans and ancient pagan beliefs, which is the halfway point between the summer and the autumn equinox. So, my favorite season is just around the corner. I would like to thank Carnation for sponsoring me tonight, as well as all of my listeners. You know, I have grown so much. Not only individually on this channel, on a much bigger personal level than I could ever imagine, from the people I've met, from the people who've reached out to me, um, from the energy listeners, from all of that. But also, I've grown in number of people that listen, and that means so much to me. Now, I want to apologize. I know you all don't always believe that these things happen with the technical difficulties, but every single time, you know, when I have someone normal on who is going to talk about their own life or their books or their story, their transformation, something, I'm fine. I log on, you know, early before my show. Everything goes off without a hitch. I start talking about my own experiences or like ghosts or aliens or something. It'll kick me off right away, and that's what happened tonight. So I apologize. That's why I'm an hour late. And but I do want to. Joe gave me the idea that I, you know, should talk about my own self once in a while. So I came across last week. You know, I do a lot of genealogy stuff for my own family, for other people, professionals. But oh, that's another thing I wanted to say. Um, that's part of the reason why I don't do a green screen. I change. I rearrange my house all the time because that keeps the energy flowing and that keeps, you know, the negativity, and I've always done that, just like changes like that every season. Um, so you will see different backgrounds, but as far as my brand new chair, like this is my cat scratched this, my little kitten that you all see occasionally. She just did this like within the last week because she was going crazy, but at least you know it's real. You know I try to be as authentic and transparent as possible because I know there's others out there. It's sometimes it's hard on TV shows or when somebody's being interviewed or whatever to believe that that's a real person. You know that those people are indeed humans going through the same. Well, some of us, you know, might not be human, but going through the same problems and issues as others, and that it's this is my story. You know, so that's one thing I wanted to address. But also, I came across a paper from which was interesting from 1977. It was from June 5th, and I thought it was funny because it said, "Here is what to do." Like this was on on a page, just like anything else, as serious as can be. Um, and it said, "See a UFO, here's what to do." And then it's got this little cartoon. I'll post it actually on my page after the show. But it's funny because it was from Wichita, Kansas, and it's got a list of 6 things to do if you see a UFO. Remain calm, don't jump to conclusions. 2, note the time, how long the UFO stayed in sight. Look at it completely. Note size, shape. Are there lights? What color are the lights? Is it moving? In what direction is it moving? How high? Is it above the horizon? Number 4, check an almanac or astronomy book to learn if it could be an astronomical event. You know, a lot of times people will be like, Oh my goodness, there's tons of UFOs in the sky, and it'll be like a meteor shower, or for instance, when the satellites were launched, everybody thought those were UFOs. Um, and then of course on here it says call the Wichita Omnisphere or the Hutchison Planetarium to ask someone to check it out. If it remains unidentified, notify the Center for UFO Studies. Um, and then it gave a Chicago address. Of course, nowadays there's many different places you can notify. Obviously, every state has a MUFON um, division. Most states have a UFO research. Um, or at least different. I wouldn't say just most states, most countries, anyways, have their own version of that now. So Um, that's also I know when I lived up in the mountains, occasionally we would check with the in the US we have like park rangers, like Forest Service for national forests, and they're the person that pretty much, you know, patrols the entire mountain and goes out on calls for that and such. And then they have their ranger station up on top of a mountain that is kind of their control point, and you can ask them as well. You can visit with them and see if something the night in question, if anyone has if they saw anything odd that night, if they kind of do your own research as well. You can look in papers, you can see if, again, if it is something with that on that specific night that might be off with planets, with meteors, anything like that. So I always tell people, because I'm one of those people that didn't I never believed anything until I saw it in my life, and I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of shit. Um, but that's why I like to try to disprove, debunk things with science or nature or whatever first, and then obviously if all of those, and sometimes you can do both. Sometimes there's a scientific reason for you seeing that, or there's a whatever, depending on the time of year. So that's I wanted to tell about, everybody always asks how my story is, how a lot of people know how my life has gone with spirits and ghosts and entities and such. And I could probably tell you, tonight I wanted to answer a lot of questions. Of course, I had a huge delay because every time I do that, that happens. But um, so if you have questions, by all means, feel free to put it in the chat. I am It's easier for me with my ADHD to focus on the chat room and be able to engage now that I know a little bit more about StreamYard, but also when I don't have a guest to try to focus on as well. So if you have a question for me about anything in my life, anything in um, my experience, or things that I've talked about before that you would like to know, feel free to ask me. And aside from that, I wanted to talk about the mountains. I lived in Southwest New Mexico, in the Gila Wilderness for quite some time, and somebody asked me the other day about my first experience with um, something that might have been like a UFO, and thinking, in hindsight now, back then I of course as a little kid I had no idea what that was, but um we used to see the stealth fighter planes. They would test those out over the mountains in New Mexico. They would come from White Sands Missile Range, and they would test those over the mountains. So we saw those all the time, and we thought that was really cool because we're the first to ever see them. Literally, we were the first kids to experience the stealth fighter jets and the sonic booms that came with them over the canyons. And so here's these giant triangular jets, and as a little girl, that was amazing to me. Um, but one of the first things I was terrified of, I would get drawn to the woods a lot by myself. It was like something was trying to isolate me or call me to the woods. And that happened a lot. Like, I knew it was happening when I would say I was probably 3, 4 years old because we didn't have a fence yet, and after my parents built a fence, obviously I couldn't get out the fence, but, um, before that, I remember it happening a lot, and I remember even in the middle of the night that I would have this urge to get up and go into the woods, sneak out, um, but also one of the first things I was terrified of, and I remember it vividly all the time, and I know now in hindsight there has to be something to that because, um I've seen it documented in historical manuscripts. I've seen it documented in sci-fi movies and stuff like that, but I had never seen any of those at the time. We had an old school satellite dish and like 3 channels, like everybody else did in the 80s. So, um, one of my first memories was of a giant spider-like creature, and I'm pretty sure that's what that was in the woods. I don't think it was a spider particularly. It looked like a spider to me as a little kid, and it was huge. And when I'm talking huge, I mean this thing, um, it was probably like, I would say 6 feet wide by probably by 6 or 7 feet tall, maybe a little bit, maybe like 5 to 6 feet tall. And again, this was my child brain. I probably thought it was way bigger than but still, it was way bigger than like my room, my doorway, anything. And it scared me. I was terrified of that thing. There were other entities that didn't scare me as much, and I thought they were very kind to me. And there were spirits that were kind to me and such up there. And we were on an ancient native burial grounds as well. I mean, the entire mountain was, but there were also. I lived near the Gila, the cliff dwellings. I also lived near a lot of where they discovered the Paleo tribe, um, which was like 30,000 years before any inhabited um, more modern native tribes that we were aware of. And this was just in the past few years they've discovered that. So I wasn't aware of that at the time either. Um, so the spider was one. I got woken up a lot in my sleep. Um, I would also wake up in the morning in different parts of my room. Um, with nosebleeds all the time. My pillows were always covered in blood. I would have nosebleeds all the time in my sleep, and my mom's like, how is it like splattered, on different so it's almost like something just dropped me, not on my bed, somewhere else in my room. Sometimes my pajamas were like backwards and stuff. I remember that. Sometimes in my parents' room seemed like 10 miles. I mean, it could have been 10 miles away to me for that matter. It wasn't. It was across the house. But because of these things that happened, it terrified me. And I remember telling my mom, these things. And of course, even with the spider, she's like, "Oh no, it's just a little spider. It's not going to hurt you." And she would use it was something similar to Lysol, like a room like an air freshener. And she would spray it and she would say it was monster spray. I didn't know until as an adult I actually tried that when a very negative interdimensional being was in my house. I tried that years ago and it worked because they don't um that's one of the things with like sage and stuff. They don't like the scent. They don't like strong smells. They can't touch things like that. It's toxic to them and they absorb it through their skin. So essentially, yes, the monster spray my mom was using just as kind of a placebo effect on me was actually effective at the time. And so I thought that was funny when I learned that when I was older. Um One of the major times though that I just recently remembered again because I mean most experiencers um forget things over and over and over and over. We either block them out because it's traumatizing or our memory of it is erased. And so one of the main things I remembered recently was And there's a reason I do that. A show will come on, somebody will tell me to watch some specific movie or read a book or listen to a song or whatever, and I I end up doing that because that's what I'm led to. And I don't typically, the only reason I do that when somebody mentions it is because that's not normal for me. I mean, I read a lot and stuff, but I don't just go watch TV. I don't just, unless it's specific. So I was in Colorado one time. I mean, I used to live in Colorado, and I was going to a business meeting. I was modeling at the time. I was going to a business meeting with my makeup artist um, in Grand Junction. And Grand Junction's a few hours from Denver. Um, we were we left at like 3 or 4 in the morning. We were supposed to be there to check in to my contracted meeting by it was like 7:30 or 8. And so, given our current um the distance we had traveled and such, we could see the lights approaching of Grand Junction of the city on the highway. But on the way there, her and I started talking about all these things that happen in our life, all these, and I remember that. I don't remember what they were because that part is still completely erased, but we started realizing all of these synchronicities, and we were perfect strangers. Like, we had never met. Similar things happen in our lives. We had a lot of similar people in our lives. And so that's the last thing I remember. And we saw the city approaching. We're like, oh, good. We'll have plenty of time to check in the hotel, um, get ready, whatever, and show up to my contracted um, modeling thing. And so the next thing I know, this was like, it was still dark. So it was like 6:30 in the morning. Um, the next thing I know, the sun's out. I look at the clock, it was between 11:30 and 12. Um, and we're in the middle of the desert. There's no city in sight. There's nothing in sight. We are in the middle of the desert driving. Neither of us had any idea. We both start freaking out. I'm like, how? There's no way we missed an entire city. We didn't miss it. You can't miss Grand Junction from that highway. You drive right through it. You drive right over it, in fact. And so here we're confused. One is how we missed an entire city, how we also missed like 6 hours of time, but more importantly, where the hell we were. So finally, we came up to like a rest area, and I got out to look at it was like a historical type marker, or a rest area sign, with a map. And we were halfway through the Utah desert, and neither of us had any idea how we got there, what happened. Um, in fact, I had a flight to catch the next day, or well, yeah, that day I was flying home for Thanksgiving, and I almost missed that because it took us so long to drive back. Now that we were halfway through Utah. And so um, and obviously extremely frazzled. Like, how do you explain that? The first time it happens, how do you explain? Because it wasn't like it was just me by myself. If it was me by myself, I would have thought I had gone insane. And so um here we were, halfway through Utah, missed my contract. I got fined for that. um got back to Denver and everything, and I never spoke to this woman again. I don't even remember the name of the modeling agency. I don't know anything about that part is gone. I can't find the pictures from it. I don't have any of that. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. And so um that was one of the first times. But just recently, what triggered this memory, which happens a lot with experiencers, a lot of times I'll have dreams about some of my experiences, and then I can go back and kind of verify them through. A lot of times I take pictures a lot of, apparently intuitively, before I'm abducted and such, because I'll take a picture of the time. If I'm in my car, I'll take a picture for whatever reason. I just automatically, intuitively do this. I'll take a picture of the time on the dash or what song is playing. So I know, because it got to where every time I'd come to and come out of this, I was like, I know I'm not going crazy. I know 100% that that happened. It's not something, it's not an illusion. It is not a figment of my imagination. I know this happened. And so it got to where I started proving it. And so, just recently though, sorry, I keep getting off track. Um, I had no idea that um, what eventually was known as Area 52 um, was located halfway through Utah, and so so that was a big that was a big moment recently in my memory of those things, and so a lot of times those trigger other memories, that I didn't know existed either. And it's hard to work through that because yes, we know that not only are there, the military abductions and stuff, we know that there's extraterrestrials. We know that there's those kind of abductions, we know. Um, but sometimes I think I, I don't think my memory was erased of some of these things. I think like with my own mind, I blocked it out because some of them were very traumatic. Some of them, obviously, Joe and I were just talking about this. I'm extremely hard headed. I question everything. And so if somebody's taking, I would be the worst person to kidnap for them, for that matter, because I'd be questioning them and they'd probably get so damn annoyed by it that they'd like not. So, um, so I had some traumatic experiences with those things as well. And so, that was one of the first major times because I ended up in another state. Not only did end up in another state, I lost a lot of time. I wasn't alone. And so when I read all of these reports nowadays, when they're trying to tell people that that oh, abductions don't exist. It's just sleep paralysis. Okay. I don't sleepwalk into another state. I don't um Oh, throat chakra. See, again, what I wasn't supposed to talk about. Um, there's no way I can, especially when I was wide awake before it happened, and had somewhere to be and a schedule and was on a direct route to like we saw the city. It's not like we got lost before it. And so that's one of the major things that obviously tells me that that actually happened, and the fact that there was another witness, and um it also proves that wasn't sleep paralysis, because with sleep paralysis the theory is that you imagine in an illusion state or a dream type state, you imagine something holding you down to where you cannot speak or move or anything else. And then of course there's a lot of people that with the theory that it's something holding them down, like an old hag, an extraterrestrial, a shadow figure, whatever it is, like sitting on their chest or something. I can tell you, in my entire 41 years of life, that has only happened to me maybe twice. Maybe twice. The actual sleep paralysis where I thought that something was, holding me down to where I couldn't move or talk. And then, even then, my roommate at the time, right after that was happening, when I was trying to scream for someone to help me or something, um, she actually physically saw this being running from my room and to another, like at the same time. Had no idea what was happening to me. She was in her own room. But so again, that cannot be classified when so many people are coming forward with these stories. That can't be classified as something that just by, it's a physiological response, because that wasn't a physiological response. We were both 100% awake. Um, and so that's another theory. But obviously there's always going to be people who, for multiple agendas, try to disprove and discount these things and make people seem like they're crazy. And I get it. I get it. Um, that was one of the major times, though. Another time, there's there's been so many. It got to where I did do things and I can post an entire archive of the pictures, the videos I have, all of it, all of it. This is the screenshots of the time, the days, because I didn't realize that these pictures were and videos and stuff were different. I always thought that this happened to everyone. Remember, I thought that I was under the impression that it was normal. And so the only time I ever see these shows and stuff is when I'm usually at work, for a little bit once in a while. And just the other day, they were talking about these giant winged looking creatures that people are catching on camera, and how they had a tiny one that flew in front of a um some sort of security camera or whatever. And it was very blurry, not, obviously things like that. It wasn't very good quality. And this man that was being interviewed or whatever, and this was just from, I don't remember the name of his show, but it was just recently, like it was from the last few years. He said this is the best um proof that these things exist that has ever been captured on film. And I'm like, well, no, that's not true. I have tons of those. Like, I wonder if people want to see that. Um, because I do. I absolutely do. I just didn't think it was something I had gotten those. Um, I took those for myself to prove that I wasn't crazy and I wasn't losing my mind. And a lot of times I took them by accident. Like I'll attract spirits and stuff and catch them on camera or whatever all the time by accident just because they're always there. Um, but that was a major thing as well, is finding all of this evidence on. And not only, like, obviously I've learned that I can't keep it all in one place. If it's on a computer, it gets erased. If it's on a phone, it gets erased. If it's on whatever, it's very hard to. If I write it down, it'll disappear. So I have to, I guess it's something to think about for other people. You kind of have to be creative in in storing things in multiple places as far as um, all of your information, because for one reason, to remind yourself of the next time your mind's completely erased or you forget everything. um, but also, if it's in multiple locations, if other people know about it, then it's harder to erase, it's harder to get rid of. So um, that's become really important actually in my life. And I also started doing things, after I learned, after I became a certified clinical hypnotherapist. That experience itself was another time where I had a premonition. I had a dream beforehand. I had a dream about a month beforehand that that was going to happen. And I didn't know exactly when it was gonna be. Actually, I didn't even know it was. I guess I wouldn't say I didn't. I knew that it was gonna happen. I knew that those trainings always come true at some point. I didn't know where it was going to happen, because in the dream it was a location that I wasn't familiar with. Um, and so I went to Oklahoma to study clinical hypnotherapy, and while I was at the hotel, um, I heard a man screaming, and in my dream a month prior, I I was on like a pretty high floor of some building, and I could look out the window, and I heard a man screaming, and I saw this like yeah, very, very tall extraterrestrial looking being, no clothes on, it was like a greenish gray looking anyways, I saw him because he was a lot bigger than the man, and the man was obviously an adult. Um he was dragging this man out the rooftop door of this it was like on top of a parking garage or something. And I remember him dragging him out one of those, the exit door on the top. And to something, it was like something was over by they had like a helicopter, a helo pad, on the top of the parking garage. Um and so they drug him over somewhere like that, and I don't remember what happened next in the dream, but the rest of the surroundings on the way there was like a forest I wasn't familiar with. And so it didn't occur to me until I went to the Skirvin Hotel in Oklahoma City, which is actually notoriously one of the most haunted hotels in the Midwest because it is very old. There's been a lot of things happen there. And back in the day, there it was one of the most expensive hotels of its kind in this part of the country. It took a lot of money and a lot of time to build. And aside from that, Oklahoma has tons reports. I didn't know that until I was there either, and I looked it up. That I'm like, "Oh, shit." I started looking up, back then, the only thing I was familiar with was MUFON's website of the live. They have a live, um, like a real-time UFO tracker, that people have reported all over. And so I went to that, and there were so many that popped up instantly on that day, like, that's never good, because I knew what was gonna happen. I knew that what happened in my dream was going to happen in reality, and then, sure enough, a few minutes later, I could feel them coming for that matter. There's a change in energy. There's a literal change in energy in the air, and a lot of times they'll create storms and do all these things. Well, I could feel them coming, and, I heard a man scream. And I didn't even look out the window because I already knew there was a parking garage out my window, that I could look over. I already knew what was gonna happen. I had already seen it. Um, and at that time, I go through these phases where I feel um sometimes I'm really hard on myself in those instances because I'm like, I had a warning and it's like I fell into the trap, you know? Now there I don't know if you can hear all the sirens. That's again another um so um that was another time more recent, that was last year. Um, there's been recently, so there's been a shift in the world series on why and what's happened that's changed everything's ability to travel through this three-dimensional world, as whether you're talking about ghosts or spirits or whatever. Um, I have my theories on that, but it's happening a lot more. It's happening to a lot of people, and I think um I think that's what was scary to me at the time because I struggled for a long time not after something very, very major happened to me which I'll talk about one of these days, but something really, really big happened to me, and it got to where I was afraid of the world. I didn't want to own a cell phone. I knew that everything can track you that way. I didn't want to turn my TV on ever. I don't even think I had a smart TV at the time. I didn't want to, I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't know who I could trust because I knew that certain people there's see when we think of entities in the universe, they don't all necessarily have bodies. Um, many are just spirits, but they're still an intelligent being. Um, and so I got paranoid there for a while of one of these things impersonating one of my friends or family members or someone that I trusted because I had seen it happen before. Um, and so it was a rough transition. I wouldn't go anywhere near mirrors because I knew that that was one of the ways they used to um, track people and stuff. And I assume it's because you look into your own eyes, you know. Um, and so a lot of those things held me back for quite a long time, probably 6 months to a year. Um, and after that, people around me knew. Um, people close to me knew. Sometimes I knew that they were getting taken with me, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to alarm people, especially when I knew that it was like a bad experience. I didn't want to alarm people close to me that it was all happening to them. Plus, I didn't want them to think that it only happened when I was around, that it was happening to them because of me, like a guilty by association type thing. So I became really isolated in that. And last year, of course, on Chasing Prophecy, when Jenny Nicasio brought me on the show, I will forever be grateful to her because that was one of, even though it's taken me a while to come out of my and actually open up and I've always been myself on the show, but I've been selective in the stories I've told about my own life because I had so many blockages with it. But getting that out, getting that, telling somebody, telling that was another fear of mine. I was afraid to tell the wrong person. I was afraid to. Kansas used to be known, and the town I live in as the um, mental um, capital of the world of the U.S. As far as the institutions and the asylums and stuff, because they said there were so many crazy people here. But now that I'm learning about these things, it was people she didn't want. It, back then it was. Oh my gosh, see, this is what I'm talking about. Like I completely lost my train of thought. It's like something literally zapped me. Um, yes, mental illness. See, my screen just went black. So mental illness, capital of the US. And we had all these institutions and underground tunnels and all that. And that's where it made me think that obviously if this is happening to me here and I've been here for a little while, then it's happening to other people all over the state, all over the Midwest. And then it makes you wonder, like, why here? Why yes, you can prove some of the reasons scientifically, different ley lines, different um, being in the geographical center of the United States, things like that. Um, but it makes you wonder if it's just certain people will say it's certain bloodlines, it's certain this or that, but my family wasn't originally from here. And as I said, it doesn't just happen to me here. But major thing, look at like Superman was based out of Kansas, Supernatural. There's all these um there's all these sci-fi, there's all these comics, there's all these movies that have been based in Kansas. And it's the heartland. There's way more that we're missing than just um, ley lines and reactors and um, even planetary alignment and things like that. I feel like there has to be something else here. And it's not that just draws gifted individuals because a lot of places do that. There's a reason everything is like more magnetic in this place. And that could be it. It could be something as simple as that. Um I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I do try to go to tour and learn about the history of a lot of these places and a lot of the asylums, because I sometimes the people who have been tortured at those places visit me, um, whether it be in my dreams or in waking life, and show me some of the horrible things that have happened to them. But more importantly, are those part of some of the Millab, um, those abductions, or is it an experiment? Know? Um, so, and when I say these places are huge, like they say there's tens of thousands of bodies buried under the Topeka State Hospital alone, unmarked, unmarked at that. Um, and if you look up just the nature of the experiments done here are absolutely horrendous, and it makes me sad that humans ever do that to each other. But obviously, it also makes you wonder if they're being influenced by something, by an outside force that nobody can see, that's working behind the scenes. So, um, those are some of the main things of this. Um, Recently, I started obviously trying to better my health with Lyme disease. Um, But sometimes the symptoms made me wonder if those weren't from Lyme disease, like if those were caused from something else, because Lyme disease affects every single part of you. And um, I was thinking how, well, obviously, if you get abducted and you travel to their ship that came from another planet or wherever, um, and especially if you travel outside of this planet, um, you're exposed to germs and diseases and stuff that our bodies aren't used to. And so I'm wondering if that's how I got Lyme disease, because the night, I want to say the weekend I got it, I was camping and stuff, but I took some really odd pictures and it was a full moon. Um, so that was really relevant at the time. Um, and then you see in the media and news and everything how these bacterias are evolving and affect, there's the red whatever one that affects the ocean, and is so toxic that it could kill an adult within, I believe, 5 minutes, but it can also kill things like a whale. And so if you think of something like that, flying in on one of these asteroids, the earth's hit with, I don't know, tons of asteroids all the time. um, if you think of it coming in on one of those, or being carried just from people when we go on, when we're exposed to it, then absolutely, like that would be, and then or some of the ticks that were dropped out of military planes during the project whatever back in the day, over Georgia and San Francisco, things like that absolutely could spread a disease that at 100% affects every single part of your body and crosses the blood-brain barrier. um So I've theorized all of those things as well. Um, when I'm thinking of past uh, memories of abduction. And so I try to work it out, and I encourage you to do this as well. I try to debunk and prove scientifically, physiologically, biologically, astronomically, every way. I try to look at it from every single angle. So I know 100% that what's real and what's not. Um, and there's been other times I've had a dream about driving down the road and someone chasing me in a car. Not like they're not in the car, they're in a ship or something. And we see them coming up behind us. And that used to happen a lot. Um, and I never really knew if it happened in real life. I thought those were just dreams for the longest time until I started finding pictures up on my phone of being in places that I didn't know I was going to. Or again, it's not like I've been tested for every behavioral um, and psychological issue that a person can have, and it's none of those. So, what's your opinion? What are your thoughts as listeners on my experiences? Do you think it's all sleep paralysis? Do you think um, it's just the government? Do you think it's both the government and extraterrestrials? My gosh. Whew. Something just went across my living room and scared the heck out of my dog, made him fall off the couch. But anyways, so what's your opinion? Do you think that these people, as far as scientists and psychologists, psychiatrists, things like that, do you think that they're right? And this is some sort of um, vitamin deficiency causing sleep paralysis? Do you think it is um, military abductions only? Or do you think it's a combination of all three of those things? Let me know. It'd be interesting to hear everyone else's perspectives as well. And I have tons more other people there, but um, it's getting close to. And now I only had an hour since we lost the first one, and I've even been affected during this time. Like I could feel something literally made me lose a complete train of thought, twice at least. So um, another thing I found from June of 1963 was when um, I don't want to say it was NASA, and I can't read that small, but I do remember the article. It said the government um, dumped 400 million needles in space. That was back in 1963. Also, radioactive levels increased in the United States as Johnson wins friends in the UN. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, another time, I was trying to think, another time when I was in Lawrence, Kansas, and I can post these pictures as well. One of they have little storefronts, and there's a lot of concerts and stuff there. They have a lot of music venues, and the storefront had a girl sitting execution style, kneeling in front of these other girls. It was She had knocked over a cup with some, red fluid in it, or that's what it looked like. And then on the other window, the display had the same girl completely fallen over on the ground with the red cup, or the cup with red fluid in it, red liquid. And then behind her was another girl with completely white hair, and another one. There was an alien, like completely silver, and those were mannequins, of course. But the picture and the message that was depicting was crazy to me. That I'm like, does nobody notice this? Like, somebody's putting out that message. Somebody's going to notice that. And I took a picture of it. And it was later that night that we went to my friends went to this bar. A lady had been there. It went off again. And and she said they'll slip something in your drink, and I was like, I mean, that's pretty common in a lot of college towns. So I always watch my drink. And it was just a weird place. And then I went into this cereal bar that had owls everywhere. Like they collected miniature owls, and I was like, "Oh no, no, I've seen that movie." So, um, Lawrence was a very odd place. And that's where a lot of there's always good and bad, obviously, in anything in the world. So that's where you hear a lot of the reports of really evil, not just evil spirits. That's where they filmed a lot of the scary horror movies from like the 60s. Um, so not just scary films, but also reports that like of like CE5 and stuff, which I don't believe they have bad intentions at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when you get certain people that um that will say something about will kind of trigger something, and especially if you've had an experience there, that will trigger that memory. So a lot of times other experiencers help trigger memories because then you're both recalling the energy of something that happened to both of you. Um, and and I think that's important nowadays because more people we're learning more. Um, I it went black again. Even from talking to people, I used to tell people, especially after learning hypnotherapy, I used to wear sunglasses. I got nighttime sunglasses for driving, not only because I have astigmatism, but also because lights can be used to hypnotize you. So, how do you think a lot of these things hypnotize people? It's because of the lights. And so, you always hear of the lights on UFOs. And I would wear sunglasses everywhere at night because I didn't trust. Um, I didn't know what would happen, or I was terrified of what would happen if I was hypnotized again by something else. So I did that. I got what are they called? They're like the kind of headphones, the earphones, the noise reducers, noise protection for uh for like race cars and shooting ranges and things like that. A lot of people use them for the at the gun range, things like that, um, to block out because I knew they were putting in the atmosphere like a very high pitched, a certain frequency that only certain people could hear that it would affect us. Um, So I'd wear these headphones. I know, but I would know when it was coming though. So it was like I was trying to protect myself from that. I would wear the headphones. I would wear the sunglasses so they couldn't affect my eyes. Um, and then back then I would put on if I can be threatened by an extraterrestrial, I'd put on either a lot of essential oil, perfume, something because they don't like strong scents. So and now, ironically or not, I see all of those things popping up in movies. Um, so it must have happened to somebody else, and somebody else must have figured out that that's that's a few of the things that you can protect yourself against other things, whether it be ETs or spirits or whatever. One of the main things, though, is the clarity of your mind. If you drink or do drugs or eat unhealthy all the time, then manipulate you. So when people come and they're like, um, how can extraterrestrials just take you against your free will? Well, that's one of them because if your mind isn't clear, then obviously you can't control your body. Um, but the second factor, which I've had this theory for a very, very, very long time, and watch now, after I say this, it'll be out there and somebody will go write a book about it. But I 100% higher being. People ask me that all the time. That's not the point of this. Um, I believe that certain religions over the years, um, and I'm not talking recent years necessarily, over the last few centuries, um, if they changed certain, if their form of the Bible said, "Give your life to me," which a lot of them do, and when you're talking referencing God, um, if extraterrestrials in fact cannot impinge on our free will, then that would be without our permission. Then that would be giving them direct permission, right? So that's something to think about as well. Um, about that after I was baptized, which I don't regret at all. And as I said, I still believe in a higher power and everything. But when people come to me and they say, "Well, Trish, this couldn't have happened because maybe casting spells, maybe you're creating magic, you're doing this, maybe no, back then I wasn't doing any of that. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about paganism. I knew nothing about witch. Well, I mean, I did know about it intuitively, but not. I was Christian. I was extremely religious. I thought it was all religion based, what the things that were happening to me. And but right around that time, religious or not, really bad things like that and abductions and everything else were happening to me. Babies being taken and blood and everything else. And so that could not possibly come from, I guess, a different trigger source. It couldn't have come from because I was into the occult or witchcraft or whatever people are going to say. It could not have come from any of those things because I didn't do any of those things at that time. It wasn't even on my realm of knowledge to do sense. And so um that's something that was interesting to me. I'm like, are we inadvertently giving permission because of things like religion or authority or whatever it may be? Are we giving away our free will? I don't know. That's another question. Um, so something to think about. I will let me know what you all want to listen to. Let me know what you would like to talk about, what kind of guests, what kind of content you would like. Um, I tend to do what I'm intuitively drawn to. So, and there's no rhyme or reason or algorithm or whatever. Well, there is. There's the universe's algorithm, but there's no particular reason I contact specific people for an interview. It's people that I personally um, am inspired by or want to hear their story. So if you have a story, I would love to hear it as well. You could be on my show. You can email it to me anonymously for that matter. You can even come on without your picture if you wanted that, just your voice, or vice versa. I could pre-record, a little clip of one of your experiences as well. So let me know. My email address is the missing piece with Trish. No, no Mo, just with Trish at gmail.com. And so I'm going to look into doing that. So have a good week. Be safe, everybody. And we will see you next time. Thank you.